Welcome to Women of Courage Season 2, where my guests continue to share their courageous stories. It's my hope that these stories will encourage and inspire you as you face your own challenges, that you will take action to courageously pursue your own dreams and passions, no matter what obstacles are presented along the way. I'm Ann Miner, your host for the show, and my guests are women from all walks of life who have faced significant life challenges. Whether these challenges involve their health, their family, their business, or their career, it's apparent that every aspect of their life was impacted. Our women of courage have found the strength to confront, to overcome, and to succeed in spite of everything. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment with today's Woman of Courage.
If I were brave,
Welcome back to Women of Courage. I'm here today with Ruth Johnston. Thank you so much for joining us, Ruth.
Thank you for having me here.
Well, I'm so delighted that you've agreed to tell your story to our audience. And I'd like you to start with your childhood.
Well, it began in Waterloo County on a farm that had been in my father's generation for several generations, and it was a good place to start. A lovely old farmhouse that had some amenities. My mother came there as a bride and loved milking the cows because she had grown up with that. She grew up as an old order Mennonite on a farm with horse and buggies, and so the farm was home to her. And we, 4 children who were born sort of in a row, really have good memories of that place. It was secure, it was financially secure. My father wasn't a farmer. He was a dreamer. He should have been a teacher. He decided that mechanics was a better option than farming, so he worked in a garage in Preston and then wanted his own. So he took our family to a little town down in Lake Erie, Dunville. The river divided the village of Bing, where we actually lived, in the town. But this little house had no amenities, and it was small and in the middle of the village. And my shy mother, who was much, much happier away from a lot of people, found herself plunked in the middle of this village with a garden that was Haldimand County clay, and a growing family to feed because the twins were born after we moved there, and so there were 6 of us, and she had to deal with all of this. Dad was not a businessman. He brought other things to our lives. The night that he brought a violin home and danced around and pretended to play. Music was a love that both our parents shared with us. We had a beat-up old piano that we learned to play, and violins that came into the house, and a cello. Eventually we had a string quartet in our home. And when the doors were shut and we were safe and secure inside the house, it was fine. But you know, when you go out to school in old hand-me-down clothes and shoes that didn't fit, and a big family that at that time already was kind of out of fashion. So we felt the stigma of this poverty, of my mother especially, the shame of debts, because my father couldn't keep the business together. It was tough because when you're poor, people don't expect you to do well. In school, they don't expect you to have social graces. There's kind of an expectation that you're just down there at a level that's culturally beneath everybody. And it didn't take into account that my mother felt that education was so important, and reading and proper grammar was important, and the music that we enjoyed. the social circle within our church, we were accepted because that somehow was a great leveler. So we had friends. But when you got out there, we all felt like we were second-class citizens. And that informed me later on when I'm working with low-income people. I remember how it felt, and it gives me compassion, and it's taught me how to look at people differently, that you don't look at the clothes they're wearing or where they've gone to school or what they have done. And so that was a teaching moment for me that I've carried with me. But, and then there were teachers at school, one in particular in public school, that took me aside in grade 7, and she knew I enjoyed sewing. So she had me help her make some little dresses and clothes for a little girl in a family that were worse off than we were and needed clothes. And so she really encouraged me to develop my skills. And then in high school, a French teacher actually, that was when I went back to school when I was 21, and she gave me a room in the house to board in town, to do some babysitting and then some after school work, and that lifted me out to be more self-sufficient on my own and really gave me a lot of encouragement. So I quietly bless those teachers every once in a while, because those mentors are really important when we're young.
So back up just a little bit. You left school somewhere in there.
Yeah. I was 16, and you know, you're one of the older ones. I had 6 brothers. I was the only girl, so I needed to help, and we did. You know, it was just, back then though, there was a school leaving certificate at grade 10 that sort of, you did have something for grade 10, but I didn't give up on my dream to finish. So when I was 21, I got back on the school bus, went back home to live, had to ask permission from my parents or from the teachers to give my slip at school, even though I felt like an adult. Finally the principal said, oh, you don't have to do that, you know, if I needed a day off. But yeah, it was again, the encouragement of other adults in my life at that time to say, do it. Back at a time when there wasn't an adult ed program in the community, you had to go back to high school. And you know, the first time around, the first 2 years, I was a mouse in the corner because I was afraid of being too visible. I didn't have the clothes and the whatever that everyone else had. But when I went back, I was at a different space economically for myself. And I found that I just shed those 5 years, and I became a teenager again, and I really had fun. You know, I just enjoyed those those years. But it just made university possible then. So that was my goal. And I was 2 years, and then love found me too. I married my sweetheart from first year university, and after 2 years he said, well, I'm graduating now, I'm going to be a teacher, I can support you, so you don't have to finish. So off we went to Algeria, North Africa with MCC, Mennonite Central Committee. And that was, I mean, half a year in Grenoble, France for language study and seeing Europe, and I mean, wow. That was an awesome experience. And again, to understand another culture and to feel at home in a culture that was so different, and to realize that those people are the same as we are. And now when I look at those cultures that are in such dire straits now, and the pain that so many of those people are going through, I remember them as neighbors, as people like we are, that loved and cared for their children, for us as foreigners. We're so hospitable. So another lesson learned.
We're going to take a bit of a break now, Ruth, and we'll come back and talk about that more. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment with more Women of Courage.
What would I do
Welcome back to Women of Courage. We're here today with Ruth Johnston. We're going to pick up your story in Algeria.
That was a bit of a defining moment in understanding the bigger world, the broader community that we in North America tend to be very short-sighted about, and to see other cultures and other people who speak a different language, who live differently, and that they're essentially the same as we are. So that, we moved on from there and had another term in Jamaica with MCC, Mennonite Central Committee, and came back and settled into life back home. Things were falling off the rails a bit at home, and I knew that I would eventually have to make a decision about what was happening with my personal life at home. And knowing that I needed to be prepared for the eventuality that I needed to support myself. And so going back to university became a really important dream. I looked at where I had been at University of Waterloo and found out that I could just carry on. They had a good distance education program, and I could continue with courses one at a time, pay for them as I was going. I taught school in a private school for several years, and so I had some income. And then when we moved closer to where I could drive in to take a summer course, to take an evening course, eventually understanding more about the world around me back here, and the whole the news around domestic violence became, it just seemed as if it exploded in the papers, that all of a sudden they were talking about shelters and supports for women. And even though I kept everything at home under wraps, I still started thinking about where I identified with them, and decided that pursuing my dream of just getting a teaching degree wasn't where I was at, and looked at a new program that Renison on the campus of U of W had opened up about social development studies, a combination of social work and community development. And I thought, aha, that's what I want. And so that, plus some other seminary studies that I had a chance to pursue. As I was working on that, Operation Sharing advertised for a position of community outreach worker, and that was a perfect fit. And I had 5 wonderful years working with the communities in Woodstock, the low-income communities, but finding a place that fit, that I felt at home, because I had been there and in some ways was still there. Even though I didn't talk about what was happening within my home, I could identify with what was happening with some of those women. And I saw how they were dealing and how coping, how even though they had left abusive relationships, they didn't shrivel up and die. And I thought, okay, I can learn from them. How did they do it? And eventually when my situation hit, it felt like going over Niagara Falls and you were going to crash on the rocks. But I had a church community that really supported me, and my family, and all the friends in the community that just gave me a soft landing. The staff, I was working at Ingamo Family Homes at that time. We had started the pre-employment training program. Deborah Chansonov was the first director there and was a wonderful mentor, teacher, director, and she gathered the staff in a way of educating and supporting even our personal lives, and was one that was really there for me. So I really have so many people to thank for where I am today. And then further along, the staff, Mary James has been from the beginning. The 2 of us have worked at that program, and later on the other staff that have been added, but have been friends and mentors and supports, so that we're just never alone when we reach out. And I think that's the key. And when we take courage and learn from others that have gone through tough times like this, it's what keeps us going.
Yes, and that's what we're hoping our audience is learning from you
well.
and our other guests. So you completed your university.
I did.
At the age of?
I was 53.
53, wow. And then you went on.
Yes.
And recently you have been recognized with the Queen's Jubilee. What?
The
medallion?
The medallion. It's a medal.
Mm-hmm.
A huge honor. I am humbled by it because, again, it's not something that you can do on your own. When I think of all the projects that at the center, the Women's Employment Resource Center, that have together, we've worked together at doing some pretty wonderful things in the community. One of the Blankets for Peace project, where the volunteers that haven't found work yet and come back and help, and the women who supported in the community, sending hundreds and hundreds of blankets around the world with Mennonite Central Community, but also locally, all our local shelters in Kitchener and London. And I think that having got that program going, and then all of the people that have come involved, it's been a really neat way for me to think about segueing my work there into something that can keep on going. And that's what I really want to happen. I don't want to just drop off the face of the earth when I finish employment.
So where are you today, and where do you think you're headed?
Well, I am thinking about probably another year of work, and then I need to give way to the younger ones who need the employment too, but also it feels like a place to wrap up. I'll be 75 and I'll be ready to be a point of a break in the funding. Probably, I hope they'll keep continue. But I can continue to work with some of those projects and work with women that have become involved, that just as volunteers, and supported in that way. So that's what I hope will happen after I finish my paid employment. Just carry on somehow. I've been really, really grateful for good health and lots of family, and I've got these grandchildren that just absolutely keep me going. Oh yes.
Yes.
A little granddaughter that's close by that is my biggest cheerleader, and it helps sweeten the, yeah.
So Ruth, if you had one message that you could leave with our audience today, what would it be?
I would say we're not alone, and we just need to reach out. That there are people in our paths we may not recognize, or there are people that that are waiting, or there are programs, or there are groups. We just need to reach out because they really are there, and I guess to take that step. For some, it's whatever keeps us back, whether it's shame or fear or lack of knowledge of who's out there, who can help. But we're not meant to live in isolation, or those people are there if we reach out. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for telling us your story and sharing the journey and such optimism that you have brought to your story as well. And now a few words of wisdom from a wonderful, wacky, one-of-a-kind woman, Jezebel Peppa, a woman of courage in her own right, who will share with us her thoughts on the themes of today's episode.
Hello, darlings. Jezebel Peppa here. Darlings, have you ever seen those big, tall birds with the long neck and they stick their heads in the sand? Ostrich, that's what they're called. I think all of us at one time or another are like the ostrich. We put our head in the sand. We don't want to see what goes on around us. It's safer that way. It's easier that way. But let me tell you something. You need to pull your head out of the sand and take a look at what's going on around you. There are people out there that need your help. I know it's not safe. I know it's not easy, but it's something we have to do. There must have been some time in your life when somebody showed up at just the right moment, at just the right time, with just the right thing. And if they did, you know what an angel they were. So you have a choice to make. Do you want to be an ostrich or do you want to be an angel? Celebrate the fact that you can be an angel, and remember to celebrate the Jezebel in you.
There's some talk about this, and it's
Thank you, Jezebel, and thank you, Ruth. I know it took great courage for you to share your story with us today, and I, for one, am motivated to take the next step towards my own goals. You know, as our thank you gift for you today, you'll receive a copy of my book, Succeeding in Spite of Everything, and you'll take home our lovely centerpiece from Floral Occasions in Ingersoll. Now, we would love to hear from our audience. Last season, many of you wrote to our guests directly to let them know how you had been inspired and encouraged by their stories. We would love to be able to share your comments and feedback on future episodes of Women of Courage. So please contact me directly by email at the address on your screen below. And please like us on Facebook too, at Women of Courage TV. Remember, in every setback lies opportunity. Opportunity for you to call up all that you've learned through your own personal experience and through other people's stories. To rely on your core beliefs and values, to rally your strength and your courage, to find your way through, to overcome, and to succeed in spite of everything. Until next time, be courageous.
Whisper in my ear. If I were brave, I'd walk the razor's edge, where fools and dreamers dare to tread, and never lose faith, even when losing my way. What step would I take today if I